Today is the day that the Raiders and the rest of the NFL find out when and where they'll be playing their 2024 opponents as its scheduled release day. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 15th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of you, Raider Nation, your support of the show, the consistent going back and forth to the show. We definitely appreciate that. Of course, my man Ari does a great job getting us up on YouTube each and every day. You can hit up Ari on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As you can imagine, a lot of calls and texts coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. We'll try to get as many in as possible. A lot of them have to do with the quarterback conversation that we had on Tuesday's show. Who should get the nod as a starting quarterback in 2024, as there'll be a real, true camp battle, I believe. And my thoughts are it'll be a true camp battle coming up when they get to Costa Mesa between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, right? So that's coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk all things Raiders schedule and what I'll be focused in on when I got my hands on the schedule. We'll be talking about primetime games. We'll be talking about the bye week, talking about the tough stretch, talk about the primetime games, talk about, we already know the opponents where, you know, when they're going to, we don't know when they're going to play, but we know the opponents that they are going to play. So just kind of, you know, how it all plays out. So a lot of stuff to focus in on when it comes to the NFL schedule. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. Just a couple nuggets that I want to pass along to you, and we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. But off top, I wanted to go ahead and play some sound from you from Marcel Reese, who was on Kay Adams' show Up and Adams. And Marcel Reese is obviously a fan favorite, number 45, right? He was that guy, right? The fullback out of Washington, hell of a player for quite a while with the silver and black, and haven't really talked to him. Haven't even thought about him really since he left the Raiders organization after Sandra Douglas Morgan took over as the president of the organization. There was a few folks that left the team, and Marcel Reese was one of them to venture off and do other things. And I don't know what other things are, but I do know that he was on Up and Adams, Kay Adams' show on FanDuel TV on Tuesday. And there's a couple sound bites that I thought were pretty interesting and pertain to what we were talking about on Tuesday's show when it came to the quarterback position. Now, first, Marcel Reese is from the University of Washington. So Kay Adams asked him off top about Michael Penix, who obviously played quarterback at the University of Washington. So you'll hear her ask the question about if he wished Michael Penix was throwing passes to Davante Adams. Check it out.
Do you wish Michael Penix was throwing Davante the ball?
You have no idea
Your face
how
tells
bad
me.
I wanted that.
Well,
You have no idea how bad I wanted that. Atlanta made a fantastic choice of taking Michael Penix Jr. with the number 8 pick. He is going to be a fantastic leader for years and years to come, and a phenomenal quarterback. I have an unbelievable amount of confidence in that choice, no matter who he was throwing the ball to.
So there you go. Marcel Reese is clearly very high on Michael Penix. And again, I mean, look, University of Washington, you can see and connect the dots. It's not that that's not that difficult, right? But I do think Michael Penix is going to be a hell of a player. The Falcons drafted him number 8 overall. We'll see what ends up happening, right? I'm still not convinced that the Raiders would have taken Penix at 13, even if he was available. Obviously, this is not to try to bring up the conversation of the Raiders missed on a quarterback, this, that, and the other. It was just a Marcel Reese and what he responded to that Kay Adams asked him. So, of course, the competition, which you'll hear a lot of calls and texts coming up in segment number 3, is between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. So, again, for anyone who's just maybe tuning in for the first time this week, Antonio Pierce was asked about that quarterback competition on Friday before rookie minicamp. Matter of fact, Vinny Bonsignore asked the question about how comfortable he was, and this is what he had to say about O'Connell and Minshew and who's going to get the starting nod in training camp.
You made it pretty clear all along that no matter who you brought in here at quarterback, the job was basically going to go through Aiden. How comfortable are you with that quarterback room and excited to see how this thing all plays out?
I'm excited. I mean, what Aiden did the last 4 games And what he's done this offseason, changing his body, his work ethic, being here every day, blocking out the outside noise, not worried about anything. I'm excited. And then you bring Gardner in here, and then listen, you talk about personality. I know you guys interviewed him. It's great. It's great for our building. It's great for our quarterback room. And if you got competition in the quarterback room, what does every other room look at? Looking at those two guys. Anthony Brown's done a heck of a job as well. So what I see is guys getting out there early. Aiden is already kind of taking the bull by the horn, and he's leading the way, and Minshew's right there doing as well. Two guys that's played, and you saw them play against each other last year, and they went neck to neck. But I'm really excited to see what happens. I think it's going to be a process. We're going to stick to the process. But as I said before, Aiden's earned the right to go out there and get the first snap.
So I reset that, and I know I've played that sound a couple times this week, but again, for anyone that's just tuning in for the first time this week, that happens at times. I just wanted you to kind of understand where this next sound from Kay Adams and Marcel Reese is coming from. It's coming from Antonio Pierce, what he said that Aiden O'Connell has earned the first snaps. And, I take that as it's Aiden O'Connell's job to lose. I know Gardner Minshew has been given $15 million fully guaranteed to be, the Raiders quarterback in some kind of capacity for the next couple of years, whether that's a starter or that's a backup. He's got to earn that, right? And so I think that Aiden O'Connell is going to get better. I've said it before that I would be kind of surprised if Aiden O'Connell's not the starting quarterback week one. But again, he's got to go out there and earn it just like Gardner Minshew's got to earn it. So Marcel Reese was asked the question about what AP said when it comes to Aiden O'Connell and getting the first snaps in training camp. And here's his response. Check it out.
Based on what you know about Aiden and what you might know about Gardner, what do you make of the decision?
I think it's not so much about Aiden and Gardner, but more so about Antonio Pierce and the culture that he is trying to implement in that locker room. Meaning, it's not about how much money you make. It's not about what you've done in the past. What are you going to do here? Can you show me the work? And Gardner Minshew hasn't put on that silver helmet yet, and that's something that you always have to earn. Whereas Aiden O'Connell was put in a situation where he had to step up to the plate, start on a team as a rookie, and make plays for that team. And that's a hard job that's a hard thing to do. So what Antonio Pierce is doing for that locker room is saying, show me that you can make a play. Show me that you're going to do what's necessary in this silver and black uniform, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to keep your spot and earn your spot.
So there's Marcel Reese right there kind of responding and talking about, being a Raider and the fact that Aiden O'Connell has been a Raider. Gardner Minshew has not, even though Gardner Minshew is a good quarterback. But you hear Marcel Reese saying what Antonio Pierce is trying to do, the kind of tone he's setting in the locker room, and, talking about not worried about how much money you make or where you were drafted or whatever the case may be, right? Whoever earned the job, whoever has earned the right to put on that silver and black and be that starting quarterback is who it's going to be. And that's how I kind of look at it as well. And that's another reason why I gave the nod to Aiden O'Connell. And that's assuming, and that's a big assumption, that he doesn't go to training camp and just completely get outworked by Gardner Minshew. I think their skill sets are very similar, not the same traits, but as far as ceilings, I think that they're pretty similar as far as quarterback go. I think that you're going to kind of expect what to get from O'Connell and what to expect from Minshew. But that's why I give the nod to Aiden O'Connell, because he's been there, done that. AP has counted on him since day one, since he took over November 1st. So that's why I believe he's the leader in the clubhouse. But again, just because you're the leader in the clubhouse doesn't mean you're going to hold on to that job. You've got to go out there and earn it. And that's what AP is going to make anybody who's starting for the silver and black do. And that's quarterback, offense, defense, special teams, whatever the case may be. If you're out there on the field, you're going to earn your playing time. That's part of the culture and the identity that Antonio Pierce is trying to bring to the silver and black. So I thought those were a couple interesting little sound bites. It's always good to hear from Marcel Reese. Really good dude. I always appreciate having an opportunity to talk to him. Speaking of opportunity to talk to folks, and I saw this again from Tristan Kuhn, and that's 2 days in a row. I got to shout him out. We are actually tweeting back and forth about this. The Raiders lose director of pro personnel. Tristan tweeted out, the Lions are hiring Raiders director of pro personnel, Dwayne Joseph, for a high-level front office role. It's a sizable loss for the Raiders, as Joseph oversaw pro scouting over the last 3 seasons, seeing the team sign players such as Robert Spillane, Andrew Billings, John Jenkins, Adam Butler, Jermaine Illuminor, Greg Van Roten, and Tyler Hall to high-value contracts. And so off top, I was like, man, Dwayne Joseph. And I knew who it was, and I thought, man, I hope that's not my guy, because I always see that in this, and you'll understand in a second, I always see this guy either at the facility, or I see him at the game, or see him at practice, whatever the case may be, and it's always, hey, how's everything going, yada, yada, yada. We kind of chop it up, and then I realized that it was Dwayne Joseph, and it's personal for me when it comes to Dwayne Joseph, and why I say that is I was going to a game early on in the time that I was here in Las Vegas, early back in 2021 when I arrived, and I was at Allegiant Stadium, had my credential on. I'm getting into the elevator. I get in the elevator, and I stand kind of towards the back. So then the elevator stops at another floor, opens up. Some guy gets in, and he just gets in and kind of almost throws his backpack and almost hits me, in the face. And I kind of look at him. I looked at him sideways like I wanted to have an attitude and I wanted to say something. And I didn't. I just decided, you know what? Cool. I'm not going to say anything. And Dwayne Joseph is in the elevator, and he's standing in the corner, and he looks over at me, and he knew that I wanted to say something. He knew that the dude was really rude about jumping into the elevator the way he did. Didn't say excuse me, nothing, no kind of manners. It was real rude and disrespectful. But I didn't say anything. Like I said, I wanted to, and I didn't. And he looked over, and he knew that I wanted to say something. He said, "Good decision. Good decision, young man." And then he looked at me and said, "Don't worry, they'll see you one day." And I promise you, to this day, as God is my witness, that has never, ever gotten out of my mind. I've never, ever let that statement go. I know it's a small statement. I know it might not mean anything to some people, but to me, that's a big deal. Like he said, they'll see you one day. So I saw him, quick story, I saw him at the facility probably a few weeks ago. And what day was it for? It was something that the Raiders were doing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they had some kind of event going on, and he was there, and I walked up to him, and I'm glad I did, because now that the Lions have hired him for some front office position, which congratulations to him. I'm super happy for him. I walked up to him, and I said, "Hey, man, I just wanted to tell you that day in the elevator when you told me that they'll see me one day, I've never forgotten that. I will never forget that. That was a hell of a piece of advice. Thank you." And he just looked at me and was like, "You're welcome." Gave me a big hug and everything and said, "Keep doing what you're doing. I see you." And again, probably doesn't mean anything to anyone, but it means something to me. For a guy that's been grinding my whole career and trying to get to where I'm trying to get and still have a lot of things that I'm trying to accomplish throughout the course of my career, to see somebody recognize me and understand that, okay, you were in a bad position, you did the right thing, and don't worry, at some point, people will recognize you. They won't do something like that. I thought that was a big deal. Again, it's very personal to me, so it might not mean anything to anyone else, but that's okay. So that's always going to be my memory of Dwayne Joseph, and I promise you I will never, ever forget that little piece of advice. Don't worry, they'll see you one day. And really, that can go for anybody who is doing anything. And you might feel like, you know what, they don't see me right now. Make them see you. Make them see you, and make them see you some more. Again, shout out to Dwayne Joseph for the job he's getting hired for with the Detroit Lions. Don't know exactly what it is, but as Tristan put out there, a high-level front office role. So shout out to him. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Little news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, the NFL schedule. What will I be focused on when it drops this afternoon? We'll talk all about it coming up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. And right now, it's winner take all time in the NBA, in the NHL. A lot of good stuff going on. The WNBA is back in action, and FanDuel is going to give you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, what do I mean by that? New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and a whole lot more. And the player props are a lot of fun, especially in the playoffs. And if you're betting on some big-time players, I had my guy Emmett Golden the other day, needed one shot, I believe, from Kyrie Irving to hit his parlay, and he actually did it with the last one shot that really didn't mean a whole lot, but it was a shot that meant a whole lot to him. So he was like, hey, you know what? Didn't really go the way that I thought the game was going to go, but it ended up okay. Just is another element, another way to to play and follow along with the games and have a little bit of fun. All you got to do to check it out, be a part of it yourself, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the NFL schedule. It's finally releasing this afternoon. Depending on what time you're listening to this, it may already have dropped. And, of course, we'll be talking about the Raiders schedule in its entirety coming up on tomorrow's show, and we'll break it down, and we'll give you the win-loss. You know, we always do that. But the Raiders' opponents, we already knew who they were, and the Raiders have the 9th toughest strength of schedule with the 512 win percentage. And, of course, that can always fluctuate and change. Some teams aren't going to be as good. Some teams are actually going to be better than what they were. It's based off of projections from what they had, the teams did in 2023. But the Raiders are the 9th toughest strength of schedule as of right now. Only the Browns are number 1 with 547, the Ravens 536, Steelers at 533. And, by the way, the Raiders play all 3 of those teams. The Texans and the Packers are at 526. The Giants and the Bills at 516. And then there's the Raiders there at 512. And it's funny because they have the toughest strength of schedule in the AFC West. The Chargers are dead last, right? As far as the AFC West go, they're actually ranked 28th in the league at 478. The Broncos are 20th overall in the league at 495. And then the Chiefs, who are back-to-back Super Bowl champions, are just above 500, 19th ranked toughest strength of schedule in the National Football League. But none of that matters. You go out there and you play the opponents that are on your schedule, and you play them when they show up. But when they show up is always going to be the big question. So we already knew who the opponents were. 8 home games, 9 away games. Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, obviously those are division games. That's home and away. The rest of the home games, the Browns, the Steelers, the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Jaguars. The away games, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Saints, the Buccaneers, the Dolphins, and the Rams. So as far as I'm concerned, a lot tougher schedule on the road than they have at home. I think the Jaguars are very beatable, the Panthers, the Falcons. Hell, I think the Steelers are very beatable. And who knows what Deshaun Watson's going to look like for the Browns. So I'm not saying they're going to go 8-0 at home, but very, I don't want to say easy because nothing's easy in the NFL, but easier, I guess, winnable games at home. Away, it's pretty tough. The Ravens, right? They were a game away from the Super Bowl last year. The Bengals have a healthy Joe Burrow back. The Saints, who knows? I don't care about the Saints as much as some people do. The Buccaneers, we'll see if they can get back to the playoffs. They were a playoff team a year ago. The Dolphins, they were a playoff team a year ago. And the Rams, we'll see what Sean McVay has cooking. So I feel like it's a little bit tougher on the road. And, of course, they've got 9 away games as opposed to 8 home games. So what will I be focused in on when that schedule ends up in my hand? And I'd love to hear from you as well, Raider Nation, 707-654-4693, or you could tweet at me at your boy Q254, and of course Ari as well at Ari Produces. What are you focused in on when you get that schedule in your hand? For me, the very first thing I look for is obviously the very first game, the season opener, right? Is it home? Is it away? Is it primetime? Is it not? Because obviously that's the game that we automatically focus in on that game. Right? Once we get the schedule in our hand later on today, I will immediately start focusing on, okay, all attention is on this game, right? I was hoping it was going to be the Raiders and Chiefs, that September 5th game in Arrowhead, banner raising night like the Lions had last season. I was hoping it was going to be that game. It's not. The Ravens are playing the Chiefs that game, so Baltimore will be there, and then the Chiefs have Cincinnati in week 2. So back-to-back tough games for Kansas City. Who knows how that shakes out? But that's the game I was hoping it was going to be. It's not. So who knows what the season opener is going to be? I'd love to see, the Raiders hosting the Steelers. That was my pick. I would love to see that season opener. I think that they owe them for that loss that they had at Allegiant Stadium last season to Pittsburgh. Should have never lost that game, but the Raiders found a way to do it. That was one of big Josh McDaniels, his big what in the hell was that type moments while he was coaching in 2023. So that's the first thing I'm focused in on. Season opener. Is it a home game? Is it an away game? Is it primetime? Is it not? Next thing I focus in on immediately, where are the Chiefs games located? Like, when do the Raiders play the Chiefs? And when is the home game for Kansas City? And when is the away game? When do the Raiders go to Arrowhead, right? Is it later on in the season? Is it early in the season? When are they going to go? And most importantly, are the Chiefs coming off a bye that week themselves, right? If the Chiefs are coming off a bye going into the Raider game, it's miserable. It's just misery. The Chiefs don't lose. Andy Reid does not lose very often coming off the bye week. So I'm always hoping that the Raiders don't have to play the Chiefs coming off the bye week. They have in the past a lot played them coming off of Kansas City's bye week. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case this year, but not really worried about Kansas City. I know they're the defending Super Bowl champions. The Raiders proved that they can go to Arrowhead and win a game. What they need to do is find a way to beat the Chiefs at home. Patrick Mahomes loves coming to Vegas. He loves it because he doesn't lose. Right? He just comes to Vegas and all he does is win. And I would love to see the Raiders hang a big L and send him back packing back to Kansas City. Right? I mean, are they going to sweep the Chiefs? Probably not. Right? That's probably unrealistic. But, they got to get at least one game with Kansas City this year. And I'd love to see it at home. They got them out on the road on Christmas. We all remember that game last season. Would love to see them get them at home. Then my third thing I focus in on, when is the Raiders bye week? Last year, it was week 13. That was way too late. I thought the Raiders did okay with it as far as managing the injuries. Obviously, they didn't have a great performance coming off the bye week. Didn't score any points. Lost to the Vikings 3-0. But then 4 days later, beat the brakes off the Chargers. So there's that. But I would like to see, obviously, the bye week closer to the middle of the season. 8, 7, 9, something around there, right? Don't want to see it week 13, week 14, and don't want to see it early. Don't want to see it in like week 2 or week 3. That's ridiculous. So you want to try to get as close to the middle as possible. So that's another focus. Cold weather games. That's my other focus, right? I got a lot of focuses, right? I got a lot of different areas that I'm looking at when I'm looking at this schedule, and we'll dissect it. We'll rev it up. We'll flip it down. We'll do it all that. Oh, no, right? We'll do all that stuff. So cold weather games is something that I'll be focusing on. How many of them do they have? I mean, think about this. On the road, they've got Denver. That's potentially cold. Kansas City, potentially cold. Baltimore, no doubt. Cincinnati, no doubt. So there you go. There's 4 right there on the road that can be cold weather games depending on when they come up on the schedule. So that's something to focus in on. Prime time games. When do they play in prime time? I love prime time games. I really do. It's funny. I was doing radio one day in Philadelphia. My guy Mike Gill said, man, I hope the Eagles don't have 5 prime time games again this year. I was like, what, you want more? And he's like, no, I hate prime time games. Like, can't we just have a 1 o'clock kickoff game? And I was like, what is wrong with you? He's like, I just don't like prime time games. I was like, man, fans love primetime games. Like I was like, I don't know, man. Maybe you're spoiled. I don't know what's wrong with you. I love primetime games. I love the fact that the rest of the league are watching the Raiders, right? I mean, Thursday games, they're not the best games. We get that, but it's still, it's a standalone game. Sunday night football, obviously, that's a big deal. Monday night football is a big deal. Give me all the primetime games. I'm good with that. I'd love to see the Raiders get 5 or 6 primetime games. I'm cool with that. And then, it's a matter of conversation, but tough stretch and the easier stretch. When do you look at the schedule and say, okay, that's a tough 4 games? I always look at it in a 4-game kind of blocks. And I know there's 17 games now, but I remember John Gruden used to always break it down into quarters. There's the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Now there's an overtime game, right? A 17th game. So I always look at, where do you see the tough stretch? Where do you see the easier stretch? Is it more balanced or is it a little bit lopsided? Like the Chiefs, to start out the season with the Ravens and the Bengals back to back, that's tough out the gates, right? They easily could be 0-2 when it's all said and done. Now they might end up being 2-0. Right? 1-1. Who knows? Again, we'll have to see the rest of the schedule. And that could play in their hands as well. They could have a tough start and then an easier finish. And then all of a sudden they're feeling really good as they're cruising into the playoffs, if in fact they do cruise into the playoffs. And then, of course, once we go through the schedule, we do the win-loss. Where's the wins coming from? Where's the loss? What's the overall record? Is this a team that's playing for the playoffs? That's basically how I dissect the draft, or not the draft, the schedule. It's just like that. And we will do shows on top of shows on top of shows, even though we've already known who the opponents were. Again, the 8 home games, Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, that's division. So those are home and away. Browns at home, Steelers at home, Falcons at home, Panthers at home, and Jaguars. And the away games, the Ravens, Bengals, Saints, Buccaneers, Dolphins, and Rams. If I was going to pick an away game to go to, it's funny. Most people would think I would pick the Saints game because of New Orleans, and I love that city. I really want to see Baltimore. I'd love to see the Raiders take on Baltimore, and I'd love to be there. Now, again, I hope it's early in the season, so it's not a really cold game, but I'd love to be there at that one. Cincinnati, obviously, that'd be the playoff, kind of a get back, little revenge game for that playoff loss that they suffered in 2021. That would be cool. Dolphins, when are they going to play them? You don't want to be there when it's too hot. Tampa Bay, it's the humidity as well. I mean, there's a lot there. The Rams, the Chargers, those are like 2 home games, even though they're played in SoCal, right? The Raiders and Raider fans will take over that stadium there, SoFi Stadium. So it really, even though the Raiders have 8 home games, they technically kind of have 10 home games based off the fact that they have to go to SoFi a couple times, take on the Chargers and the Rams. So that's what I'll be focused in on. We will get the schedule a little bit later on this afternoon. I look forward to it around 3 o'clock Pacific time. And, of course, we'll probably get plenty of leaks in between now and then anyway, as we always do. But that's what I got for you for segment number 2. We talk all things Raiders schedule. It's going to be a fun day to see exactly when and where the Raiders will be playing in 2024. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. And we just did a whole segment talking about the NFL schedule release. Gametime could be perfect for that. I just talked about road games and where do you want to go. I talked about Baltimore. Maybe it's New Orleans. Maybe it's Cincinnati, right? Those are a couple of games. Maybe you want to go to South Beach, go to Miami or Tampa Bay. Whatever the case may be, Gametime can help you get those tickets, even last-minute tickets. You want to be like my guy Vegas Jets and get your tickets last minute? You can. Gametime will help you do that and get to that destination destination game that you are looking for. They have priority last-minute deals. They've got flash deals, zone deals, all-in prices. They even have seat views, so you can actually say, hey, I'm going to this Ravens game, and I want to see what my seats look like before I buy it. Boom. Gametime has got you covered. They got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And, of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So once you get that schedule in your hand and you decide what games you want to go to, you need to use Gametime. Gametime is going to hook you up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a call from Adam in HB, that's Southern California. He's calling with a quick call about the quarterback position and what he believes will determine who's under center. Here he is, Adam in HB.
Hey, Q. This is Adam in HB, Southern California, where I won't be watching the Costa Mesa training camp because they won't let us in. Anyway, I called to talk about the starting quarterback role. So I kind of figure I like Aiden O'Connell, just like a lot of Raider Nation does, and I do think it's his to lose. But I also think the O-line is going to dictate who the starting quarterback is going to be. I think if the O-line doesn't form the pocket for Aiden O'Connell, we're going to need Gardner Minshew in there to be the mobile quarterback he is and make plays on the go. Let me know what you think about that. Raider Nation, let's go.
Adam, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And the O-line will dictate it, huh? Honestly, I really hadn't thought about it like that, right? And that could be potentially where Gardner Minshew has the advantage, right? We know that he is more mobile. He's not a guy that's going to go run for 1,000 yards, but he's a guy that could use his legs. He was able to use his legs last season in Indianapolis under Shane Steichen, the head coach there. He was also able to back up Jalen Hurts, so he's got enough athletic ability to use his legs. And depending on, as you mentioned, the O-line, that could be a factor in the quarterback competition is Gardner Minshew's legs. That could end up being the deciding factor, is not necessarily the offensive line, but the mobility and athleticism that Gardner Minshew has that Aiden O'Connell really doesn't have. And again, it kind of goes back to the offensive line and how they are playing. Are they playing at a high level? Are they able to protect really solidly? Or are there a few leaks in the line? And then maybe that mobility is going to be needed more than than we anticipate. So that's a good call. Thanks so much, and great angle and great way to think about that. Appreciate it. Up next, got a text from Rick in Annapolis. He says, "Hey Q, it's Rick in Annapolis. 2 things. Remember how many times AP compared Aiden to Eli? That has to mean more than we're giving it credit. Us improving at tight end in the draft, it's like you said about possibly adding a defensive line to double down on strength. Same theory, different position, but it has to improve our points per game average. Raiders." That's from Rick in Annapolis. And look, I'm O'Connell. I think that O'Connell's going to be the guy under center. I feel like AP and O'Connell have a real good bond with each other, a really good relationship. He clearly believes in him, right? He gave him the job November 1st and never took it away from him. Everyone and their mother, including myself, said, yeah, I probably need to sit Aiden O'Connell down and get, Jimmy G back in, or, get someone else in there that could help the Raiders win some games, especially because AP needed to win games down the stretch. And even after that 3-0 performance that they lost to the Vikings on coming off the bye, stuck with O'Connell and, rode it on out. So I just think there's something to what they, that kind of bond that they have. And you're right, he did mention Eli when he talks about Aiden O'Connell quite a bunch. So maybe he is kind of putting that same stock there in Aiden as he did in Eli, even though Eli obviously won multiple Super Bowls there with the Giants. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Frankie in Phoenix, Arizona, calling as a lifelong Raider fan and giving his 2 cents on who he thinks the quarterback will be under center and why. Here he is, Frankie in Phoenix.
Hey, what's up, brother? This is Frankie calling from Phoenix, Arizona. Just want to come in and just talk about the QB situation, man. I don't know, but I think a lot of people are throwing Aiden O'Connell out the door already. We just seen a little bit from him last season. I think he just has that little chip on his shoulder that he wants to prove everyone wrong. And I think he can, man. I really do think that Aiden can prove people wrong. I believe in the guy. I've been a Raider fan for all my life. I'm only 23, but, you know, I've been a Raider since I was a baby. But I really hope, you know, Aiden can come through for us, man. It's been so long. I don't even remember the last time he won anything. So, man, it would be great if one of these, I really hope it's Aiden, man, but it would be great if one of these QBs can come in clutch for us, you know, get us in the playoffs, maybe win the round or two, get us excited. But, hey, this is Frankie from Phoenix. Just calling in, you know, first-time caller. GG's, brother. Have a good day.
Frankie, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Glad to hear you as a new booty caller. But you got to remember, man, it's a family-friendly show, right? We got to keep our language clean, right? My mama listens to this pod. Kids listen to the pod. It's a family-friendly show. So, again, we appreciate you calling, my man. You know, and look, we know that Aiden's going to get the first-team reps. We know that. AP said that. He's very clear about that. It's literally going to be up to Aiden O'Connell to keep that. Gardner Minshew wants to play. Aiden O'Connell wants to play. One of these two dudes is going to be the starter. One of these two dudes is going to be the backup. That's what we know, right? It's going to be up to those guys. And that's why I said on Tuesday's show, it's literally going to be, I think, the only true quarterback competition in the NFL in 2024 during training camp. There'll be other teams that say that there's a quarterback competition, but a true competition, I believe, is only going to be with the Raiders between O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Thanks for the call, my man. Appreciate you. And again, thanks for being a new booty caller, man. Appreciate that. I got this text from Ohio Raider from the 419. Says, Q, what up? To Ohio Raider from the 419. It'll be Aiden O'Connell as a starter. I think his experience last year will help him win this job for all the reasons AP has said about him. Also, we need to know if he is our quarterback going forward. If not, we can sit him and start planning ahead. No one nationally expects anything from our quarterback room, so this will be helpful for O'Connell as well. Quick example, I was listening to the NFL channel, Bruce Murray and our Kirk Morrison, and a guy called in suggesting the Raiders are desperate at quarterback and that the Lions should trade Hendon Hooker for Devontae Adams. Of course, Bruce and Kirk laughed at him. But with that said, this is a big year for Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders. Thanks for all that you do. That's Ohio Raider from the 419. And, yeah, thanks so much for that, my man. I do appreciate you. And, yeah, nobody's really talking about the Raiders quarterback room in a good fashion. Everyone's talking about, yeah, the Raiders have weapons. They brought in Brock Bowers. You know, Zamir White showed really good at the end of the season. They upgraded the offensive line, but who's going to throw the ball? Like that's how every sentence is ended when they talk about the Raiders and the offense. Yeah, but who's going to throw the ball? What are they going to do with their quarterback position? That's what everybody nationally says. Even when I'm doing a national show with them on ESPN, whether it's Carlin vs. Joe, whether it's my show, Game Night, whatever show I'm on, right? It doesn't. When I was on Greeny, didn't matter. Who are the Raiders going to get to throw the ball to their weapons? So O'Connell, you know, he's a guy that he's had to fight for everything, right? I mean, we've told the story a million times. I mean, the guy was a walk-on at Purdue. He was like 8th on the depth chart, right? I mean, he's gone through a lot. He's seen some stuff. Let's put it like that, and really had to work to get his job. So, I mean, if anybody is ready and up for the challenge of having to fight for his job, it's going to be that dude right there. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you, and got time for one more call. This one's from Ruben in Reseda. He's called to talk about the team in general. Of course, comments on the quarterback position, a little compare and contrast when it comes to Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Here he is, Ruben in Reseda.
Hey, Q. This is Ruben from Reseda in L.A. I'm hoping our defense is going to be better or as good as we were last year with the additions we made. I think we're going to be in the thick of it all, and they're going to keep us in most of the games. As for our offense, I mean, we were anemic last year. You know, I just can't see how Aiden's going to get any better than he was. I mean, I'm hopeful. I like the kid, but I mean, he holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't move. He doesn't have great arm strength. I'm just hoping that his knowledge of the offense and the offensive coordinator are going to do a better job, because it was terrible last year. And Minshew, I mean, he can generate offense. He can move, you know. He's a shooter, you know, like a lot of quarterbacks that move and create. You know, so I'm hoping the Raiders are going to be in the mix of the AFC West and go after KC. Thanks a lot.
Big Ruben, thanks for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And not a lot of faith in O'Connell, and that's okay, right? Again, that's why I throw it out there, you know, and these are two guys that are literally going to compete with each other, right? O'Connell or Minshew, somebody's going to win that starting job. So, whoever's under center, they literally are going to earn it, but they have to make the offense better than it was in 2023. If the offense isn't better than it was in 2023, Raider Nation is going to be a miserable season. Straight up. The defense could be as good as they want to be. They could be a team full of bloodthirsty pirates, like I like to call them. That's fine. But if they can't score, and if they struggle to get to 20 points again like they did last season, it's going to be a long, miserable season. You're not going to Baltimore and scoring less than 20 and thinking that you're going to win. You're not going to Cincinnati scoring less than 20 and thinking you're going to win. Even though the defense is really good, it's more times than not, you're still going to have to score 24, 26 points to get that dub, right? The Chargers, I'm sure they're going to score. We all know the Chiefs are going to score, right? I mean, it's just reality. Maybe a team like the Steelers, maybe you can go ahead and score 16 to 18 points and win. But more times than not, you're going to have to score around 24 points at least. And Antonio Pierce said it, when he got the job. Hey, what are you looking for from the offense in 2024? 24 points. Like that was one of his focuses that he wanted. 24 points at least, right? Last year, the way that they weren't able to score, especially with all the weapons they had, was just embarrassing. They were fine between the 20s, but you get them in that red zone, way too many trips that ended in field goals or no points at all as opposed to touchdowns. So thanks so much, Ruben, for that call. I do appreciate you. Got a text from Tadreese in New Jersey. We'll get that to tomorrow. Brandon in Riverside, we'll get to that call tomorrow as well. Of course, we'll break down the NFL schedule. It'll be released a little bit later on this afternoon. We'll talk about the wins and the losses. We'll talk about every element that I talked about in segment number 2. I'll let you know if I think this team is a playoff team or not. Guaranteed predictions to be wrong, right? We'll do it anyway because that's what we do. We'll do that on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.